Hello everyone, today we will be talking about the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a long, suffering, costly and divisive conflict that involved the communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal partner, the United States. The conflict was developed by the continuing of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Vietnam War began on the 1st of November 1955, and it came to an end on the 30th of April in 1975. The Vietnam War originated as a result of the US strategy of containment during the Cold War, which aimed to prevent the spread of communism throughout the world. With the Cold War intensifying globally, the United States fortified its policies against allies of the Soviet Union. So by 1955, President Dwight D. Eisenhower had spread his firm support to Diem, the president of South Vietnam, and the rest of South Vietnam. With training and equipment provided by the American military, Diem security forces got superior than Viet Minh's organization, which was a communist guerrilla force founded in 1941 to fight against the joint Japanese and Vichy French occupation of Vietnam, which was mostly known as the Vietcong or the Vietnamese Communists, arresting some 100,000 people, many of whom were tortured and executed after. By 1957, the Vietcong and other allies of Diem's oppressive regime began fighting back with attacks on government officials and other victims, and by 1960 they had begun involving the South Vietnamese army in firefights. In December of the same year, many opponents within South Vietnam, both communist and non-communist, formed the National Liberation Front to organize opposition to the regime. Though the National Liberation Front stated to be autonomous, and most of its members were not communists, the Allied countries assumed that it was a puppet of Hanoi. Next, I will tell you how the Vietnam War affected music at that time. During the World War II and the Pacific War, music was a core component of the US collective identity. Music did play an important role in war, but only as to unite Americans. Like the films and radio reports at that time, World War II music resounded with patriotism. One example of this music is Tuxedo Junction by Glenn Miller. This song reinforced the government's promotion of unwavering patriotism to willing and eager listeners. However, in Vietnam, the situation was different. Unlike the 1940s, young people in the 1960s were deeply suspicious of the government's decision to go into Southeast Asia. As casualties increased, many of the young Americans were not able to understand what they were fighting for. And songs released at that time were able to express these feelings of anger and confusion, like Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind or Phil Ochs' I Ain't Marching Anymore. The protest music took several forms. There was the Beatles' Revolution and Creedence Clearwater Revival's Everyman anthem, Fortunate Son. Groups like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane supported anti-imperial movements across the globe. Last but not least, contrary to the 1940s music, the 60s music was based on the suspiciousness of the American government and opposing the war, as I mentioned before. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and have a great one.